creating a community and really letting the content speak for your brand was really important for us, because that's how we could create not only storytelling, but also explanatory content. It's very difficult to explain a completely new product. Also, while you're basically like these games where you're not trying to mention certain things, because I couldn't say it's like CrossFit, because then I'm already in a pocket where I don't want to be, because it is, but it's not, so it was very difficult at the beginning to really grasp on that and to really get the ball rolling and explain. But we knew that, so we focused on organic growth on our social media channels, trying to get as many people just following our channels.
I'm Eric Fulweiler, and this is Scratch, bringing you marketing lessons from the leading brands and brains rewriting the rulebook from scratch for the world of today. Hey everyone, my guest today is Moritz Förster, the co-founder of Hyrox. If you are in the fitness sports world, you've definitely seen and heard of Hyrox at this point. They're one of the fastest growing brands and businesses in sports. They have created the category of fitness racing, and it was fascinating to hear Mo talk about how they got to that point. I think a lot of businesses, and you hear me talk about this in the interview, think about creating a new category. Here's a business that's done it really well. Other things that I think are super interesting in this episode are hearing about the early days of Hyrox and how they built this grassroots, bottom-up, door-to-door or gym-to-gym, in their case, growth machine, and even flywheel, as he talks about at some point also on social. But then also how they're starting to think about what the next stage might look like and the evolution there. I also love Mo's honesty and transparency around talking about some of the things that didn't work, particularly around the category definition, the naming, some of the approaches they took to the product and the brand up until now. And I think he, like many other successful challenger CMOs, has this mindset of we need to test, we need to innovate, we need to do different things. A lot of those things aren't going to work, but it is essential in terms of getting to the next level. So great conversation, amazing example of a quickly becoming very successful challenger brand. So without further ado, I will let you listen to my conversation with Mo, co-founder of Hyrox. Mo, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing today, and where are you calling in from?
Yeah, thanks so much. I had a kind of a rough travel to get here to the western part of Germany with the train today. So I'm happy I'm in a hotel now and can talk to you finally.
You must be traveling a lot these days with the world domination that Hyrox is taking part in right now.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of traveling, but I'm kind of used to that from my playing international field hockey times. So it's not more than back in the days, but it's still quite a lot. So it's still a plus.
Well, look, I really appreciate you making the time. I know there is so much going on in your world. And this is one, as we talked about in our prep call, that I'm particularly passionate about on a personal level, given my background in CrossFit and having had a front row seat to the entrance, the disruption, and now the hyper growth that you and the team have been able to drive with Hyrox. So I'm really looking forward to it. So before we get into talking about Hyrox and how you are growing the brand and the business, can you please tell us a challenger brand that you are particularly passionate about right now and why?
If you're talking about challenger brands, then for me, it's always funny because I look at it from maybe a little bit of a different perspective, because I just learned so much looking at all these different kind of branches and the brands that are playing in those fields. So it's more like about everything that happens in technology is literally, for me, that's challenging, but just because I don't understand it. So starting with what is happening in the disruptional sector of automotives, cars, you wouldn't consider that a challenger brand, I know, but just the way that these big global businesses are completely disrupting what they have done for the majority of the last 100 years, that's incredible. The same happened to the mobile industry 20 years ago, right? So I cannot really particularly answer to your question right now, because that's I wouldn't find a proper answer. But the way that how businesses are disrupting themselves over the 10th of the years, that's something that fascinates me.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. One, it makes me think we're recording this in mid-May. I'm actually in Las Vegas next week to present at this financial services conference. And it's all around kind of what can incumbents learn from challenger brands, that type of thing. And as I was putting together the presentation, thinking about what have we learned in these first 2.5 years of Rival and obviously past lives around what drives the growth of successful disruptors and challengers in the financial services and the banking category specifically, one of the things that I landed on and I'm going to include is like, don't just look at your category. There are so many learnings from other categories, full stop, but then also sometimes just taking a different perspective, looking through somebody else's lens and looking at other case studies. And it might not be like for like. You can't replicate what Liquid Death is doing if you're trying to build a bank in Nebraska, but expanding your perspective and taking pages from playbooks in other categories to your own, I think is actually a really big thing that most people don't do enough. So that's what you said made me think about that. But then also the topic around how incumbents are disrupting themselves. We throw out that prompt of what's a challenger brand that you're particularly passionate about as a way to get the conversation going, of course. But also we never really define that. And for listeners, obviously I have done in the past, but just for you, while the connotation of challenger is small, usually scrappy, startup, to us, our definition is much more about, are you taking an approach to marketing? And then of course, there's the whole product side that is fully fit for purpose for the world of today. And what is so fascinating and where we do a lot of work, and maybe we should actually do some more research into this as well, is how incumbents are challenging themselves. It's not just about the new challengers in the space. There's so much growth up for grabs with incumbents that are able to innovate and do things differently as well. So yes, while it's not a specific brand, it definitely got my gears turning, and I think will for some of our listeners as well.
And so, sorry, when because I love thinking about stuff like that. So that's why it's probably, sorry if I'm not following the script, but like when you said this, like, for example, in sports, and that's pretty much a perspective that I like so much. It sometimes also happened like in IT security firms or whatever, right? So you would hire a hacker to test your systems. And that's a perspective that I like very much, because what does that mean? That basically means that you're able to open yourself up to be very vulnerable to the things that you're obviously not good at because someone else might breach into your system. The same thing happens in sport with really good coaches. So you have like, let's say the best tennis player in the world. If you are a really good coach and you want to coach that player, the first perspective you should take is, how am I beating this player that I'm going to coach now if I was coaching the opponent on the other side of the net? And it's like in sports and in many companies, people are so busy strengthening their strength and focusing on like, this is what we've always done, that I just want to throw in that perspective because I love it so much. The perspective of like basically challenging yourself through different people. That's just something I like.
Great. So Hyrox, for those who don't know, although that audience is getting smaller and smaller every week, it seems, can you give us an overview of what Hyrox is?
Yeah. So basically in a nutshell, it's, I like creating the picture of, imagine there are like millions of people hitting a golf ball on like a driving range every day, but there are no golf courses in the world. So they keep hitting the ball on the driving range, but yeah, they can never play. And that's just for the picture. That's how we felt about the fitness, the world of fitness. People going to the gym, training a lot, doing different stuff, but there is no particular competitive sport where they can sign up and then play their sport at the weekend. So there are amazing things. You can run a marathon, but that's not specifically like training in a gym. That's like running. There's CrossFit, which is a great methodology of training. And of course, there are the games for like a few people, but it's not like you can every weekend challenge yourself and friends in like what you consider like playing golf every weekend, if you know what I mean. So we wanted to create the golf course for all these fitness people in the world. To get a little bit more precise, that means We combined running and fitness because we consider that like somehow the healthiest way how to train, to mix it up, endurance and strength parts, and combined that to something that we consider a sport, which also means, like a triathlon, like other sports, the workouts and the order of the workouts and the run is always exactly the same. So it's repeatable. You can repeat it, you can train for it, and and try to get better the second time you try it. But that's maybe already a little bit too much into detail. And I said in a nutshell, so hopefully that still counts.
Yeah, amazing. And it's funny, one of the things that stuck in my mind as someone who's been pretty into CrossFit over the last 4 or 5 years is that CrossFit actually isn't a sport. And I think emotionally, if there's anybody listening that is into CrossFit, you kind of like get a little bit defensive. But actually the way that you broke it down of it needs to be something that is measurable, repeatable, that you can compare your score this year to the one last year. It's actually true. And actually I'm no longer doing competitive CrossFit. I still go to my gym and like all that stuff, mostly for health reasons. Like I'm just worried with the way that I train that is probably not entirely correct, that I'm just going to injure myself when I'm getting too old. But also because it's frustrating, especially with, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but there's been so many changes with the model of CrossFit, particularly when it comes to competition over the years, that even the idea of like there's different workouts every year, that was one variable. But now they've changed like the rankings and like how you get to the semifinals, and like that means the workouts are all different. So I'm just kind of like, it really isn't a sport. It is a methodology, which I love and like training, and I think a lot of people do. But one of the things that we'll get into that I think is so fascinating about Hyrox is how you were able to find white space in that world, which I think they exposed themselves to because they didn't really think about it as a sport or didn't intentionally design it that way. Just one other quick question on Hyrox. So I know a big part of it, and what I've seen firsthand from people in my gym that have either gone into Hyrox instead of CrossFit, or for a lot of people, as I'm sure you know, it's both. A big part of it is the events themselves. So can you give us just a picture of like, what does the year look like? What are the events? What type of scale are we talking about? What does the sport look like right now?
Yeah. So, and this is important to understand because I absolutely don't like the comparison, because this is like comparing like a marathon with an 800-meter run. It's both running, but it's two completely different sports. You can do both, but the best in the one sport would not be the best in the other, and the other way around. And as I said, but I don't want to dive into that too much. But so our main product are our events, these sports events comparable to like a marathon. We call ourselves to a certain extent the marathon of fitness. And now we combine fitness because it's missing the word running. So we call the overall vertical in the world of sports, we call that fitness racing. And Hyrox is a product in the world of fitness racing. There are a few others popping up. Some are there for quite a while. And there will be more, I guess. But fitness racing is the overall umbrella of that sport vertical. And Hyrox is supposed to be, that's what we try to be, like the gold standard product in that field. We do right now about 70 events in 2024 from Sydney to LA. Actually, LA the day after tomorrow on the 19th of May. We have an event in Anaheim. Our events are usually, it's mass participation. So the average size of participants is 4,000 and a little bit at the moment. The biggest events have 17,000 athletes over 3 days. The smallest events have like 1,000 to 1,500, depending on the new markets. So we have in 24, we expect almost up to 300,000 participants for these live events. So there's basically every weekend an average 1.3 Hyrox events somewhere in the world. And people are flying all over around the world to participate. And that's really what we're striving at. We want to have the top of the pops, and actually one of the best CrossFit athletes like Sydney Wells is racing this weekend in Anaheim. But then we also want, and this happened just last week, someone like a beautiful lady, 135 kilos or something, finishing in 3 hours and 56 minutes. It took her 56 minutes only to finish the lunges. And we were celebrating her, and they were already cleaning the venue around her, but everybody who was still in the hall was like trying to push her on stage to finish it up. So yeah, that's kind of the scale at the moment from a participation perspective.
And so going back to the beginning, if we double click on kind of the origin story of Hyrox, like what did you see at that? Obviously your background as an Olympian, as a professional athlete, you've obviously been in this space, but what was kind of the insight that led you to want to do this? And what was it that you think resonated with people in the early days?
Well, my partner, Christian, had this initial thought of there is a void in the world of fitness and in the world of sport. He was doing triathlon stuff, Ironman, created stuff there, running events, cycling events, endurance and mass participation events, basically. And when we got together and founded, the initial idea was not only Hyrox. It was like we had a few ideas, but this was one of them, saying like there's definitely a void. There's something missing in the world of sports. That's what basically it was his first message to me. And then we started thinking about it, and we had like great training experts on our side who are still with us to the day, who started building out ideas of this could be the workout or that could be the workout. And then we tried stuff. And in the end, the overall thought of creating this, and again, sport for fitness racing, the sport within this fitness field that we thought was missing, missing in a kind of from a retention or sustainable model perspective, because there are obstacle races and there are mud runs and all these things, and they are great and they are great team events. But we thought like, how often would you do like a tough mudder race, like a mud race or something like that? How often would I do that? Would I do that 25 times? Does my time matter? Is it like something I would do more often than like one time a year or maybe every second year? And basically two insights to answer directly to your question. One, we were at the FIBO, the biggest fitness and bodybuilding convention in Cologne, Germany, or that happens once a year, hundreds of thousands of people. And we were listening to like a presentation that was saying that 52% of global gym goers, and that was 6 years ago, that they call fitness their sport. Whereas 20 years ago, that would be basketball players or soccer players or American football players that go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, but they were actually basketball players. So now 52% of the gym goers say that fitness is their sport. But what are you guys playing? That was basically our direct or question to that stat. So that was one insight that we said, okay, 52% call it their sport, but what is actually your sport? We understand this is what you train, but what is your sport? That was the one insight. And the other insight really came from just this desperate need of, if one of my buddies would finish a marathon race, the only and first question that I would ask my friend would be, what was your finisher time? And he or she would say, whatever the answer is, my reply to that would be, oh, wow, amazing. Because if that person tells me 2:59, I would be like, oh, wow, amazing. 3 hours. If he would tell me 4:59, I would say, well, amazing. Because it's about his or her personal best time or experience, right? But what is the effect out of that? That makes a sport retain. Well, I don't know the English word, sorry, but that is why sports have retention and why people are coming back, because they want to get better. And next time they want to break 4:30, and then they are coming back again. And this is this is the second insight that we said we have to make it in a way, create it in a way that people want to do it, and then they're stuck, because that's what happens to sport. When I play tennis, I'm a tennis player, and then I play tennis 2-3 times a week. And I'm not saying I play tennis this week and next week I play soccer and the week after that I play basketball. And I think that mindset is important to understand, where I'm saying that's why Hyrox is supposed to be a legitimate sport.
And I think one of the things going through my head as you're talking about that is, I think there are so many challenger brands. It's funny, we have so many conversations with businesses that are like, oh, we don't have any competition. We're so different. They're going to create a category, and that's what they sold the investors on and all that stuff. And obviously there is something to that. Most of the breakthrough success stories that you see in any category are doing something very different to the category. But it's not about not having competition and trying to come up with something completely new. Like I'm sure you've seen, like I have, some of these names for new categories where it's like there's just no understanding of what that is. and you have to educate everybody from scratch and then build the awareness and the equity and consideration to actually sell your product. But what's interesting about yours is you have kind of reshaped the category, or as you said, identified a bit of a gap and come in with a name for it, fitness racing, that is easily, people easily get that. They get the fitness thing. Obviously, they have the association with it. They get the racing thing. So I think even just the terminology, which every name is always, if you're doing it right, a reflection of the strategy that you're taking, that seems very intentional and obviously very smart. Like clearly that has paid off for you. So that's one of the takeaways for me, is just doubling down on that, how you need to think about category creation if that's kind of the space that your business is in. So let's shift gears and talk about marketing at Hyrox. So I'll let you kind of just tell us about what does the marketing playbook look like. But I know from our prep call, a couple of the things that were really interesting to me were, you mentioned the purchase cycle is more similar to buying a car, even though you're, in a sense, like the commercial model, an events business. And then the other was that you didn't invest in digital and performance for a while. So give us the marketing playbook and what the marketing model looks like overall. And then I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of those things that you did differently, or why you are different from the early stages up till now.
Yeah. And by the way, we still haven't invested in anyhow into paid or whatever digital marketing. But look, the thing is, we started as a startup, and we didn't have money. We were trying to optimize everything we do from a marketing perspective. We knew that the first and most important thing is that we somehow get reach, but we had to explain the product. This is not an impulsive buying product. It's not like people hear about Hyrox, and we're not selling a shirt on Instagram and then you swipe and then you just buy your size, right? So we came out with a product that nobody knew what it was, even in the first couple of years, because I appreciate the fact you're calling it smart, that we call it fitness racing, but it took us 4 years to call it fitness racing. We had no idea how to call it. We called it the fitness event at the beginning, and then we realized if we call it an event, then people think it's like a festival. We called it competition at the beginning. Then we realized they think that we are just doing stuff in a gym because they put it into the CrossFit corner, and then they were like, "Oh, you also have like gym events? Wow!" So it took us really a long time. But if you're asking about like the cycle or our marketing activities, the first thing, we wanted to create community, and that led to us focusing very much on like OTT channels, but also on understanding that really, and I don't like the buzzwords. We talked about it in the prep call. I hate them actually, but creating a community and really letting the content speak for your brand was really important for us, because that's how we could create not only storytelling, but also explanatory content. It's very difficult to explain a completely new product. Also, while you're basically like these games where you're not trying to mention certain things, because I couldn't say it's like CrossFit, because then I'm already in a pocket where I don't want to be, because it is, but it's not, so it was very difficult at the beginning to really grasp on that and to really get the ball rolling and explain. But we knew that, so we focused on organic growth on our social media channels, trying to get as many people just following our channels, pushing out explanatory content, trying to get a community going where we had like little gym events of people doing our job, which is now became our most important marketing strategy, which is working with local gyms, having their trainers basically explain our product, offering Hyrox classes that we started from the get-go. And then I would say why I compared so much with buying a car is just not because it's such a premium product, just because it's like when you buy your ticket for Hyrox, it's like when you buy a car, you made your choice way before. It's not impulsive. It's like you see it again. You might see it in a gym. You might see it on Instagram. You might have like a friend talking about it and your coach explaining to you a little bit more what it is. Then you go to the website, you see it there. You see that there is an event coming up in 6 months in your hometown. You check out a training plan, you go back to the gym, ask them if you can train there, and then you decide, let's try it. And then you go to the website and buy your ticket. And that's why we have like a 99% checkout rate. And the only people who do not check out, don't check out because there are no tickets available anymore. So almost no one breaks up because they made their choice. And I think that's why I compare it sometimes to buying a car, because I'm not from that business, but I would expect the second you sit at your BMW retailer and you want to buy that car, you don't stand up and say, "Oh, fuck off, I take Mercedes." So that's why I like comparing it to that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you heard me talking a little bit in pictures. That's sometimes how I can describe what I mean a little bit better.
Hey everyone, just wanted to take a quick break because we've actually heard from many of you that you want to get a better understanding of what it is that we actually do as a business. You know us through this podcast, all the content that we put out, the events that we put on, the community that we have, the media company side of what we're up to here at Rival. But actually the core business, just to kind of fill you all in, is we're a full service marketing agency at this point. Obviously, we specialize in challenger brands. And what that means is that we work with either startups to help them scale and get to the next level, or we work with a lot of incumbents like Reebok, Unilever, JP Morgan to help them innovate or launch something new within the marketing function. We typically work across 4 main areas of the marketing department: brand and product positioning, creative ideation and production, paid media planning and buying, and customer data and marketing technology. We're also building some tech of our own, as you would have seen with Curo and also Enodo. So that's it. Just wanted to fill you all in since you've asked for it. And if you're interested in hearing more about what we're up to, please get in touch. But with that, I'll let you get back to the show. You know, obviously now it's got a tremendous amount of momentum, and I would imagine a lot of it is like word of mouth, and exactly like I see firsthand in my gym with a couple of the people that have been doing Hyrox. They're getting more people into it. Now the coaches have started doing like Hyrox programming and CrossFit, which you might not like, but anyway, they're kind of exposing more people into it. But, you know, I think a lot of successful challenger brands start with the community grassroots approach. I'd just be curious to double click on that for a second. Like, what worked? Was it just the gym by gym by gym, follower by follower by follower? Like, was it just like, there's no shortcuts to doing it right? Or is there anything that you can share about like what worked really well in your approach to building bottom up?
No, it is really that entire like set of all the things that you said, just mentioned, and a few more. But in every single market, the overall most important marketing tool was setting up the first event and showing really what it is. Because we could talk about it for hours and hours, but bringing people to the actual event so they go into that hall and they see what it is, that was everywhere the game changer. So probably the stat that we are the most proud of is that I think we had 200 and something events so far globally over the years, including the 2 years of COVID and stuff, but 250, maybe 60, I don't know. And we never had an event in a city that was not increasing in participation numbers, in no city in the world. And we have 50, 60 different cities. So that's a stat that I'm really proud of, because it just, of course, we're still growing and we're going to prove that this sticks for longer. But it just shows that it's marketing, yes, but it's also the second that we were able to actually deliver the event on site and in that particular city, we could really grow from there much faster than we could ever grow before we had the first initial event in the city or market.
I know you mentioned there's kind of a bit of a flywheel that you've created with the local gyms doing the marketing for you. Could you talk about that a little bit? And was that an intentional strategy or something that just started happening organically?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to take the credit for that idea, but I absolutely can't. To be fair, when we started, we knew that our target audience is 100% in gyms. So, or let's say 95% in gyms. The people that go to the gym 2 or 3 or 4 times a week, they were our target audience. So it's difficult to scale because there's not one gym chain that has like a 40% global market share. So we started just literally, and I mean this, driving out to the smallest gyms in our hometown, explaining what it is to the owner, asking if we could join a class and explain to the class what it is, have test workouts and stuff like that. That's what we did the first year. And we focused almost all our marketing activities on that, on like grinding from gym to gym, and at the same time creating the community on social. So, and that switched like after a year already, because then we realized, wait, one moment, we are creating an absolute benefit for the gyms because they lack one thing, most of them, which CrossFit did amazing, by the way, with their model. That's community. Most of the gyms are replaceable like almost nothing else. Nobody drives 45 minutes because there's a great gym across town. People have that in their suburban or urban areas. They go there. They might even look just for the cheaper price and go to the gym around the corner. So we created something that usually only sports clubs have, like team training. And they started doing Hyrox classes, and people came to these Hyrox classes and prepared themselves for their race that was coming up in 6 months. This not only led to retention for the gyms, it also led to a new style of community in the gyms that most gyms or many gyms have not seen before. So we started, in a way, obviously, copying or taking the best out of the CrossFit model from that end and saying, okay, we charge the gyms like a licensing fee. That is not much. I think it's $1,500 or something like that a year. And we said, okay, and then you can do everything you want with our brand. You can promote it. You can offer Hyrox classes. You can use the name, the branding, and so on and so forth. And now that created the flywheel, because now, and that's what I mentioned before, now obviously all these amazing coaches and gyms in the world, they promote in the end our events. Their members go to work out at the event or race in the event. And then after that, they go back to the gym because they want to get better and they want to beat their own time in the next race. So we have this win-win situation. And I think that's a beautiful part of our marketing because it's offline. One, it's very tangible. So you can see what's happening there. And that's why I just keep saying internally for now, I like to invest into content. I like to invest into storytelling because we have amazing athletes all over the world where we can tell hundreds of stories every day. But I don't see us like pushing out any ads or something like that on whatever social media channels, because I rather invest that money to our gym community and environment and build up that.
And do you think that might change at some point? Because, I'm thinking of with the CMO of Fever Tree, if you're familiar with like the tonic water brand and there's actually a lot of similarities. And I think there is certainly a playbook of like the grassroots bottom-up community-led approach. And for them, of course, it was like bartenders and getting the mixologists and people like that in with Fever Tree, and then they've scaled from there. But then he talked about how at a certain point they had to flip and be more comms-led and start doing advertising. And part of that was also because of the product expansion, right? People knew them just for the tonic water, but now they have a lot of other things as well. So do you see at a certain point that you might need to invest in building the brand top down to go with bottom up if and when you reach a certain scale?
Yes. So I actually think that we are at a kind of a turning point where I am about to change that strategy to a certain extent. Just because we now have like a global audience, and if we do our marketing job right, then there is a way for us to have cheaper access to those retention models that are possible in market. So just to get the people back. So of course, I mean, we have all the data of all the people that raced at our event. So I can send them an email now and offer them to come back racing. That costs me literally almost nothing. But there are also other opportunities for all those who like bought a spectator ticket at an event and have not raced before, to those who do not dare to come, but they already know what it is. So it changed. I don't have to necessarily explain Hyrox anymore on social media. Still, our awareness is, we have a lot of things to do to further grow, but there's already quite a big community where I can tackle more direct in a more direct sales approach than I could do that in the past when I have to fully explain the product. So, and this is why the strategy will change to a certain extent, because we will focus more on SEO and more leading people from an explanatory content perspective to our website, explaining everything what Hyrox is there. But we can skip a couple of these, like, let's say, of these touch points because there's a growing community that already knows what it is. And that's obviously very interesting to see that process.
Yeah. And I would imagine probably part of how you're thinking about the next level of marketing is also around the sponsorship side of things as well. So I see the Puma logo on your shirt, but I would imagine building the brand in those particularly above the line channels is going to help with the equity and therefore the commercialization through sponsors as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. And Puma is a good example because to what you said earlier, I mean, in all these sports apparel companies, they have pretty clear verticals. So running is the most important for them because they want to sell shoes. Then you have basketball, and they have one vertical they call training. But to be fair, I don't think anyone really knows what that means because and also the fact that many don't know what that means. So, and I'm very convinced that fitness racing will become one of these global verticals and in these sports apparel major global players. It will happen because it just makes so much sense. It's just something else. It's not fitness. It's not training. It's a different approach to doing sports.
I'm curious, it's more of a personal thing, but I think it also factors into how you're thinking about growing the business. What about kind of viewership of the events themselves? Like I actually haven't been to an event, but now I definitely should. Like, is there a big audience there? And are you thinking about like, maybe I'm sure you already are, streaming those or eventually having them on TV? Like CrossFit made that leap a couple of years ago, although one of the things that is so hard as someone who likes CrossFit but hates the business of it is it's impossible, even as someone who loves the sport, to watch it on TV. So anyway, how are you thinking about kind of like viewership of the event? How much does that factor into your strategy?
Yeah, two different pillars here, or 2 different points. One is live viewership on site. We have roughly 80% of the participation number as spectators at the events. So we just 3 weeks ago, we had an event in London with roughly 13,500 participants. So we would have 10,000 spectators in the hall watching their family and friends race. So, which by the way is, people underestimate the earned media effect of that. Like they are all filming their friends and family and they are all putting it out on social. So that's like, I'm trying to really measure that media value, but I think it's really, really huge if I put all events globally together and I would count all these numbers. So if anyone out there can help me tracking that, I'm open for calls. So that's one. And the other thing is, to be honest, I have and we're discussing this a lot internally, but I have a pretty clear mindset on that. I want to maximize reach at this point and try to get as many people in front of the screen to watch what we do. So we only stream what we call majors. I don't want to dive too much into that, but this is our best 15 athletes, male and female. We let them race in kind of what people in other sports would call a World Cup. So they have 4 major races. We call them also majors. And in these majors, the top 15 male and female athletes race head-to-head against each other in this 54 to 1 hour kind of race. And I think it's amazing to watch. I honestly believe that. I'm a sports nerd, all right? I watch everything. And I really love watching that. This is like amazing athletes. They do an incredible performance. It's 55 minutes, 53 minutes, what I consider the perfect time to consume sports. I know this is a little bit different in the US. There are some sports that take way longer than that, but I think from like now kind of a global sports phenomenon and everything that happens in the Olympics, I think 55 minutes is amazing. And then you have also male and female a complete equality, and we show this live, so you can check it out on YouTube. Our streams have been getting better. They were not where I want them to be in a couple of years, but we invested into that a lot, and I think we will deliver a very, very good product at our World Championships in June in Nice. And this has been watched. I mean, this is growing big time. This is our most important growth channel from media reach perspective, and that's what I really want to emphasize on for the years to come. At least the next 24 months, we will focus on maximizing reach and getting as many people in front of the screen as possible.
Is there anything you can share about what didn't work, either in the early days or even what you're facing right now?
Yeah, so I said it before. I mean, it's try and error, right? A lot. I said it earlier. We try to position it as, I think the first claim we had was the fitness competition for everybody. Then we realized fitness competition doesn't work. Then we called it the World Series. We call it now the World Series of Fitness Racing. We had it the World Series. It was only called World Series before. Nobody understood that because it's a common known thing in the US. The World Series has to do something with sports, but in the rest of the world, nobody got what we were trying to say. So we did do many, many mistakes or things, or not mistakes, but stuff that we thought should work like that, but didn't. We at one point went into a direction where we thought about adding rather treadmills instead of the running. And then we were even starting to scribble that, and it took us probably 6 months to build that out. And then we realized, oh my God, no, we probably would destroy our product with that, because running is such an important part. And also from a logistics perspective, it doesn't make much sense. And I mean, it was really a lot of try and error, and we did many. Yeah, I don't dare to say the word mistakes, because I really think this is part of building a brand, and nobody does everything right. And facing challenges at the moment, I have to say, it's always a small line to level out the build. If we're trying to build out the professional sport, and a lot of challenges come with that. People get at you because the judging is not perfect, because the live stream is not in the perfect TV style way, because we are making mistakes, or we are trying to implement anti-doping stuff and control systems there. There are so many things, and people expect, and I understand that, people expect us to basically be ready with everything already, because they consume Hyrox not the way we create it. They think it is what it is, and you should be ready with a product once you start going into the market. But the reality is, we are working every single day on making the product better, and all these things are happening at the same time. So while we're trying to make it a professional sport, we still also deliver events every weekend globally for thousands of participants. And the elite or top superstars are one fraction of our participants. So leveling that out is a very, very big challenge, because we need both, we want both, but it's not easy to, from a communication perspective, to focus on, to say like, okay, everybody can do it. My mom could do it. But at the same time, we are like showing Sydney Wells racing in Anaheim, or Hunter McIntyre racing and breaking the world record. So my mom watches this and goes like, how am I supposed to do that shit? And this is like really, really big challenge for us to level out the communications, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think the thing that, that I was thinking as you were saying all that is like, it's always a work in progress. You know what I mean? I think sometimes there's the risk of kind of the survivor bias of the marketing playbook even, right? You see these successful challenger brands, they're like, we did this, that, and the other. And you're like, all right, well then I can just take that and do that with my company. But actually, foundationally, really what you need is a mindset and a culture around test and learn, make mistakes, iterate as you go. And back to our conversation at the very beginning about looking at some of these incumbent businesses in different categories and how they're trying to innovate themselves, it's often what's lost as companies scale is that comfort, if not that hunger, to test new things and do things differently. So yeah, that's kind of where my mind settles as you're talking about, obviously focus on what worked, but there were many things that helped you get there.
Yeah, definitely.
So Mo, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. Before I let you go, just a couple lightning round questions. So quick one-hit answers. But I actually don't even know if this is the right question, but what was the first, if any, marketing job that you've ever had?
I think the very first one, I was delivering newspapers when I was like 13 or something. But I have to be 100% honest. I most of the time just threw them in the trash, and then I stayed away for an hour and came back home, told my mom I did it.
Beat the system. That's where you started. What is the best piece of career advice you've ever received?
If I'm allowed, I would. That was when I was 17, and I didn't make the team in the highest German league in my sport. And like a family friend of mine, because I had an amazing offer from another club, and my family friend called me when he heard that I was about to swap clubs and go to that club. And he said, if you give up now, you're not going to make it anywhere. You either make it there and you get through the stuff now that they don't let you play and you get better and you make it there, or you will never be happy because you will always just take the easiest exit. And I will never I will never forget that, because that was the best advice I ever got. And I did.
What is the best brand campaign you've seen recently?
I think that was probably, and this might be very local. I'm sorry about that, but there is the European Soccer Cup coming up, and the German national team announced their nominated players not at a press conference, but they let various people with following or whoever announce one person, and every 6 hours there was someone else nominated. So at a famous singer concert, that singer would suddenly stop singing and would say, "And we nominate player X." I thought it was amazing. All the media picked it up. They had an incredible engagement for that, and it was a very, very good thought.
The San Diego Chargers, the American football team, did something similar recently with announcing their schedule. But I always think it's so interesting. It's like, there's so much opportunity. Just take the thing that everybody has always done the same exact way and just come up with a slightly more creative way to do it. And it stands out because everything else is exactly the same.
That's sometimes what it is, yeah.
All right, Mo, last question. What is one thing people should do differently after listening to this episode?
Try things that do firsts. Do new firsts. I think if Hyrox is one of that, then I'm happy. But if it's something else, then I'm also happy. Just enjoy life.
Love it. Mo, thank you so much for your time.
Scratch is a production of Rival. We are a marketing innovation consultancy that helps businesses develop strategies and capabilities to grow faster. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with me, email me at eric@wearerival.com or find me on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and please do leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.